I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the April 6, 2022 Fitchburg Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has 7 members. Members are citizens residing in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. The commission is appointed by the City Council and serves on a volunteer basis. The commission collaborates with the residents, businesses, and organizations to facilitate compliance with the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Fitchburg Wetlands Bylaw. Meetings of this commission are subject to and abide by the open meeting law. If you would like more information about any of these regulations, feel free to ask a commissioner, agent, or environmental consultant. Thank you for your commitment to the conservation of our natural resources. Thank you for your patience as we navigate this hybrid meeting. The commission requests that any people wishing to speak approach the podium and speak clearly into the microphone, and remote attendees maintain microphones on mute for privacy. If you would like to speak in the remote, use the chat or raise your hand function to alert the chair of your intention to speak. Let's call the roll. Commissioner Bro was not able to attend tonight, so Commissioner Baker?
Here.
Commissioner Christian?
Here.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Yeah.
Commissioner Helene? And Commissioner Sarfield in attendance. Let's see, we have the minutes. Can I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the regular meeting of the March 9, 2022 meeting? Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes? If you'd like to take a moment now, we can do that.
You can also bump to next time if, you know, if you want more time to take a look.
Let's see, Sorry,
I didn't get a chance to review the minutes.
Okay, we can push those to the next meeting. It's not a problem. Michael? Mr. O'Hara?
You can call me Mike. Right, we'll just add it to May. Madam
Okay,
Chair-
so we're going to move the minutes, accepting of the minutes to the May meeting. People have a chance to review them. All right, so moving forward, we have we received abutter notification cards? As a friendly reminder, a hearing does not open without abutter notification cards. Do we have notification cards for Leclerc?
Several months ago, yes.
Okay,
However, Madam Chair, I'm not seeing in the list of panelists, or maybe in attendees, any of the names that I recognize from GPR, the engineers for this item, Leclerc.
but we have
You
their
want-
notification cards. What about KCMC Management?
I see Billy Hannigan.
Do we have the abutter notification cards for them?
I'm not sure if, I don't have them in hand. They would have gone to Hannigan Engineering.
Is Mr. Hannigan on this call?
He is, if he is, Bill, can you hear us?
Yes.
Ooh,
Mr. Hannigan, do you have the abutter notification cards for?
I do, and I can email them to Mike immediately, or I can bring them up on the screen and show them to you.
I think in an email would be fine, Bill, you know?
All right, so I'll email that to you right now.
Mr. Hannigan, we're not going to be able to open that hearing until we get those abutter notification cards.
Okay.
And then the Mad River Solar, did they have to file did they file with the
There was
abutters
another-
for for the amended order condition?
Yeah,
We have those? Okay.
right.
All right, so is Mr. Smith on the line
Yes,
too? Okay.
yep.
Who do we have in attendance? Maybe you could let us know who we have in attendance.
You 3 here, Mr. Baker dialing in remotely, and that's it and myself as far as panelists. And then, as I said, Bill Hannigan, Attorney Barrett, a few folks from ERM for the Mad River Solar, several neighbors of Mad River Solar and are in person as well. and several neighbors to, actually Christine, I think was the only person remotely for the Leclerc item. And
Tim's here?
And Tim is here, yeah.
Okay. So under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 13, Section 40, the Fitchburg Conservation Commission will open the hearing for Notice of Intent Leclerc, proposed single-family dwelling, 0 Ashby State Road, which has been continued from last month. Is Deputy Director Erickson with us?
He's commissioner.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He corrected me last month
Commissioner,
on that.
that's what we're calling,
Yes.
He's Commissioner Erickson?
Yes, he's
Okay.
been appointed commissioner.
I'm
Yes,
going
he
to
is.
make a note here of that.
And we do have those green cards from Hannigan on the Duncan's application now. Those green cards that you requested, Bill Hannigan sent them over to me.
Thank you, Mr. Hannigan. So just to, do you want to give us a recap on Leclerc?
How far back do you want to go? Well, there was a revised
do we want to have Tim
plan
do
and
the-
stormwater management analysis submitted last month, but not enough in time prior to the March, whatever the meeting date. It was less than 7 days prior to the March meeting. So that hearing was, there was some discussion, if you recall, but that was deferred in order to have Tim take a look, and specifically the DPW commissioner take a look. I do have written comments from Nick Erickson, and actually they're up on, I can put them up on the screen here too, if I'm able to share my screen and zoom in just a little bit here.
Mr. Smith, did you have some comments you wanted to add?
Well, so if you recall, the big remaining issue we had with the Leclerc property was that they had initially asserted that they weren't subject to the stormwater standards because there's an exemption in the Wetlands Protection Act for single-family homes. And that's true, but the city's Wetlands Protection Ordinance does require that they adhere to the stormwater standards. So they did submit a stormwater design, and that's been reviewed by Commissioner Erickson, and I actually saw the comments before the meeting, and I think it probably would be good to go through those comments tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So is Commissioner Erickson there on the line, or do we
Yeah,
just
he
want to go?
is, and I'm trying to make, share my screen because I have his comments up on my screen now. Only he forgot to do it from last month to this month. Ah, here we go. Anytime, there we go. Okay, let's do full screen. And zoom in a bit. Nick, can you hear us now? If there's anything you want to add to kind of chime in.
Yep, I can hear you. Thanks, Mike. So this, I spent about an hour and a half or so going through the submittal and just kind of comparing that to the state stormwater regs and the city's stormwater regs. I see a lot of reference to the state regulations in the write-up and narrative and whatnot, but not many references to the city regulations. So I'm not sure the applicant had a chance to review the city stormwater rules and regulations document prior to conducting the drainage analysis. So a few of these comments are kind of centered on just making sure that they incorporate those requirements as well, not just the states. The cities are a little slightly more stringent, particularly with infiltration and TSS removal and whatnot. So, I mean, everything's pretty straightforward. I think there's a few minor tweaks that might need to be made. One of the big things was the applicant conducted the drainage analysis for the 210 and 100-year storms. Our city regulations require also analyzing for the 25-year storm. I'm not sure how important that really is, considering that there was a reduction shown for the 210 and 100-year storms for peak rate runoff. So that's certainly a requirement that the commission could choose to waive if it so desires. And I personally think that, you know, they've gone through the effort to go this far. It's probably not too much extra work to run the 25-year scenario. It's just a matter of punching in some rainfall data, hydrology data into HydroCAD and running the model. So if the applicant would be willing to do that, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, you know, I'm pretty comfortable with what's being shown for the 210 and 100-year storms. Some of the other things, the applicant hasn't conducted any test pits on site, just some wetland soil profile test holes, I guess. And the infiltration basin design kind of hinges on the infiltration rate of the soils on site and the depth to groundwater. So those are two like major design considerations. And having performed this design without field verification is a little bit, I mean, it's risky. So I don't know how the commission would like to handle something like that. My concerns would be that, you know, when they go to actually construct this infiltration basin, and they end up conducting the test pits ahead of time, like it outlines in the drainage analysis, and they determine that maybe the infiltration rate is lesser than what they had anticipated, or if the groundwater table is higher than they anticipated, you know, what happens then? Do they go back and redesign the whole system? Do they build it as is and try to get away with it, not inform the commission? So what happens under that scenario? And I think the commission, it would be in their best interest to somehow protect the city from that type of scenario, either with surety or, you know, maybe having the applicant go out and actually conduct test pits ahead of getting an approval. So I'm not sure how that should be handled. It's kind of a gray area because there likely will be some impacts to the resource areas just accessing the site where the infiltration is being proposed. You know, obviously you got to get some sort of a backhoe or something in their mini excavator to dig the test pits, unless they're dug by hand, which I guess now thinking about it is an option, but pretty laborious. So, I mean, other than that, if anyone has any questions on the comments that are on the screen, happy to answer them. Happy to talk through this with the applicant following the meeting, you know, later this week or early next week. I think that's about all I'd like to add.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I'd just like to make a comment to support Commissioner Erickson's comment. So we know that there was groundwater breakout at the Barrow pit, indicating a high groundwater table. We also know from the downgrading of Butter that their sump pump runs constantly, and you can just, if you look at where the homeowner's lawn is, the grade in relationship to the surrounding wetland, the groundwater table is obviously very high in that area. So I think it's a legitimate concern about there being a high groundwater table, and Nick is absolutely right. A high groundwater table is going to impact that design of that drainage system. So I think it's a very legitimate issue.
Madam Chair, in the meantime, I do recognize the name, Mr. or Tive. I'm sorry if I'm botching that, but he has been added to the team for the applicant's engineer, GPR. So I know, let me see if,
Mr. Ortiz, did you say?
TIV is the last name, and my apologies, I'm not even going to attempt your first
Mr.
name,
Tive?
Mr. Tiv.
That's all right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, a little bit louder would be
You
better.
could turn your mic up, please.
Okay, hang on 1 second. And I apologize, I'm having a little bit of a technical issue over here on our end. The internet's been down, I've been trying to get online to get on this meeting. So I do apologize for being late.
Same thing happened to me at work today.
Is that why it was a long day, Tracy?
I just went and made a cup of coffee.
Okay. Trying to get back to
I'd like to just introduce myself. Hi, my name is Limhood Tiv. I'm a professional engineer with GPR. I'm filling in for Kyle for the meeting for 0 Ashby State Road. Again, I apologize for being tardy. Just trying to get everything set up and going here.
So just to cut in here, Kyle Burchard was with us last month.
Right, he's unavailable this week.
He was also new to the project, so go ahead, Mr. Tiv.
We have not heard anything. I guess we haven't got anything in terms of a response for the design that you're seeing in front of you right now. The intent for the revision number 3 that was submitted was to shift everything out of the floodplain because we had a little bit of issues, a little bit of an encroachment upon the 100-year floodplain, and provide some drainage for the potential increase in runoff to meet the Mass DEP stormwater standards on site. As I said, we have not received any comments back, so we're on the questions and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Tiv.
If I could ask a question of the engineer. Did you hear what the DPW commissioner had to say earlier about possibility of needing additional test pits in the infiltration area?
Yes, we are aware that, potentially where we're proposing the infiltration basin, there may be a concern of high groundwater table. Understanding the site as it is right now, it would be tough to try to get an excavator in there to dig a test pit. Typically what we've done in the past is that, once access is able to be established to get on site before digging up the footprint for the infiltration basin, we would do a test pit after gaining temporary access and try to confirm where the groundwater is. If we do have a problem with groundwater where we are proposing the infiltration basin, we do have a couple of strategy of potentially providing smaller pockets of infiltration basin and stepping it along the driveway coming down, as well as providing drainage for the roof runoff further uphill. So to kind of negate the high groundwater table that you typically find closer to the wetland area.
So, Mr. Tiv, you haven't had a chance to review Commissioner Erickson's comments.
No, we have not received anything, and, we did try to reach out to the town just to see if there's anything that, any review comments we can take a look at and try to prepare for the meeting tonight, but we have not received anything.
Okay, well, that's easily rectified by sending the comments to Mr. Tiv or whoever is in charge of this project over at GBR, and move forward from there.
Yeah, that would be great. If we can get some comments back, and we can definitely try to provide a response prior to the next meeting and go from there.
So,
Well,
yes.
this been continued numerous times now, and for the folks remotely and for the folks here in person, I mean, to my mind, is it kind of late in the game now to just think about doing test pits to find groundwater elevation? I mean, shouldn't really that have been done prior to now, rather than stringing along for another month or so? I don't know. What Tim and Nick, what do you folks think? Ralph?
Do we have some comment?
This is Nick here. So I used to do this type of design as an engineer when I was in the private sector. Our standard practice was always to conduct test pits, even if we had to go out there and dig them by hand prior to initiating the design of an infiltration basin. I think the commission could potentially move forward with some sort of a requirement for a surety bond, such that, the bond is held by the commission with the understanding that the applicant conduct those test pits once the access to the site has been established as described, and then re-engineer the infiltration basin if the infiltration rates and depth to the groundwater table differ from the assumptions that are being made in the current design. That would be a way, I think, to encourage that process to take place without having a surety bond like that. I'd be nervous that maybe that would be skipped or overlooked during the construction process. So I don't think that requirement should just be waived outright. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Commissioner
Madam
Erickson?
Chair?
Just a second. Commissioner Erickson, would you be willing to come up with an amount that would be sort of an industry standard for that surety bond?
Sure, I could certainly come up with an amount and put together a bond estimate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Baker?
I too have a lot of experience in these kinds of projects, particularly from early in my career, and probably inspected thousands of test pits. Honestly, I don't think there's a good reason not to do them in advance, and I am not of a mind to feel that putting in a surety bond is an appropriate measure without having determined in advance whether the proposed design is feasible. And I've dug a lot of hand-dug test pits in my career too. So it isn't necessary to, bust through there with large pieces of equipment in order to accomplish that. So I would prefer to see test pits done in advance. They should have been done earlier. But now that Commissioner Erickson has weighed in, I support the idea that they should be done now.
Madam Chair, if I could comment as well. So it's not a large site. If it were a large site, then you'd have, I think I'd feel better about, well, if the site they chose for the infiltration basins didn't work, there are many other locations that could work, but that's not the case. It's not that large of a site. And as you go further up the slope, you capture less of the surface water runoff from the driveway. That's not a great option either. So again, if it were a large site and there were a lot of options for the infiltration basin, for locating the infiltration basin, then I would feel much more good about allowing perhaps either approval with a condition or the surety bond. But because it is a very limited site, I think the test pits really should be done to make sure that it's, if there is a high groundwater table in that infiltration basin area, that it's still, that there is a workable redesign. So I'd agree with Commissioner Baker.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I think we should talk, let's talk to some of the abutters and see what they have to say, because they're the ones who are impacted by this more than anyone else.
Point.
And if there are, once we hear from the abutters, if they can agree to continuance and waiting for those test pits to be dug and to get the results back from them, then that's certainly something we can discuss. But in the meantime, we have, is there any more comments from the commission regarding this?
I have an interest in putting it to bed, so make some tough decisions or not so tough decisions. Just a couple of comments, and I'm focusing, I'm going to focus on two things. One, to the nitty-gritty on the westerly side of the driveway. Pre-existing conditions on abutting landscapes are saturated soils. So what we can see without any test pits is the soil on the abutting property can accept no additional water. Post-construction is sure to increase the runoff on the abutting parcels. And in some instances, that's going to interfere with the quiet enjoyment and dryness of abutting properties. And that's unacceptable. But I would leave it to Tim to say if the Wetlands Protection Act protects a decision to deny the applicant based on runoff from the developed site onto an abutting property. So that's where Michael's coming from, but I'm going to go way back. And Tim, you're hired as our agent. We'd have to vote on it, but I said before, and rather than look at our narrow focus on this property, and even if it doesn't affect this property, it'll affect the next one and the next one and the next one. How far back and at what point in time does the owner or subsequent owner, how far back is he accountable for creating a hardship where wetland alteration is required? Because not long ago, the area was subdivided and subdivided again. And here we are at a hardship, putting us in a position, putting the owner in a position, and putting an abutter in a position. And if we're protected, if that subdivision created the hardship, I'd like Tim to rule on it, which, not tonight, but I'd like him to do some homework and pay it for his time and come up with how far back and at what point in time is creating a hardship not an excuse for altering wetlands. I asked it 60, 90 days ago, 120 days ago. I didn't get the answer. I don't have it. I'm hoping someone smarter than I could provide it.
Mr. Smith?
So let me say this, that one of the reasons why if the commission could deny the project because for a lack of information, that's clearly one of the reasons why the commission can deny an order of conditions. If the commission feels, for example, that they have not gotten those the pits weren't done, they don't have the information, they could deny the commission doesn't have to continue a public hearing. The commission can close the hearing, make a finding that they don't have enough information to approve an order of conditions and deny the project, if that's what they choose to do.
Move to do that.
Second.
Just a matter, Madam Chair, just a matter of, maybe it's better, you had mentioned if there's any other abutters comments.
Right,
and
let me-
then
yes, I
And then
hear
close
you.
the hearing, and then a
Yes.
vote.
Yes, I hear you. But before we get to that, thank you, Mr. Smith. Hearing none, did you have anything you wanted to add?
What I would like, so that seems like
Commissioner
a
Christian.
quick, short answer. And I can see that the people are in favor of denying it. But in doing so, won't the landowner just go to the state and appeal it on that level? And then we, I believe, are eliminated from any further action or orders of condition.
Well, not, if I may, not if you also vote to deny the project under the local wetlands ordinance,
Okay,
right? We've been through this before.
okay. And I know that, so this is under a roll call. Okay.
But Mark, you're right. I mean, they could appeal to Superior Court and appeal to DEP, and they could provide that test pit information, which is the basis for the commission's denial, and then the commission's decision could be overturned. So you're correct about that. If that information, if they provided that test pit information and showed that the soils were suitable and that the depth to groundwater was sufficient for the basins. So you're right. If they do the additional, if they get the additional information and then they appeal, the commission's decision could be overturned. But we don't know that. Because we don't know they didn't do the test pitting.
But then, in fact, do we lose any rights to give them an order of conditions? If the state overturns it, then we're out of the picture. They can just go do what they want.
Well,
So it's like a
we
double
still have
loss.
We still have the local ordinance.
And Michael?
Importantly, the rationale for any, we'll get a little ahead here, but the rationale for any denial would have to include a violation of a wetlands ordinance, Fitchburg Wetlands Ordinance. That's satisfiable in a superior court between us and the applicant. The Wetlands Protection Act will be satisfiable by DEP and the applicant. So, but our denial will have to include a Fitchburg ordinance shortcoming. Mark.
Okay, so hearing, is any more comments from the commissioners? Okay, hearing no more from the commission, let's open this up to the public. We do have some abutters in attendance, and we have maybe some
Christine.
abutters on the, in
Yes,
the remote.
recognize-
And I am going to remind all the abutters that their comments if their comments have already been put into the public record in a previous meeting, we ask that they keep their comments short and keep them to new information in the interest of everybody that's involved here. Because like I said, your previous comments have been submitted into the public record. So do we want to do who do you want to do first? The remote folks or?
Oh, well, the name I recognize is Christine Fugoni.
Okay, let's,
Let's see.
Ms. Pagoni, would you like to unmute yourself and provide us with some comments?
Do you have anything, Christine? You're not muted.
No, I don't have any new comments other than what I've added in the past.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pagoni. Going back to the people who graciously have shown up tonight, Ms. Guzman, please. Okay, yeah, if you don't, I mean, thank you.
Yeah, because they won't be able to hear.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yarisbeth Guzman from 140 Fisher Road. I don't have any new comments. I just would like to please ask you if you can make a decision tonight. That will be very, we will be very thankful and grateful. This has been happening for many years, and I believe the commissioner's point about going back and see the hardship that this has happened in our community, in the neighborhood. If you guys can go back and see, how many applications or how many people, the owners, if they have tried to do this type of applications within the city. And this is an ongoing issue. There is plenty of water. You guys all know that. You've been there. We have been there with you guys. And I just have to say that I'm still, opposing to his application to do a single-family dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guzman. Mr. Wenzel, is it No, Floyd. Is it
Foster.
Foster? I'm sorry. Mr. Foster.
Russ Foster, 115 Ashby State Road. We're talking about test pits tonight. There's no way you're gonna get a backhoe in there without tearing that land up completely. So any test holes that would have to be done would have to be done by hand. Somebody have to go in with a pick and shovel. There's no access in there unless you go over wetland. And if you go over the wetland on Ashby State Road, you're gonna crush that pipe. It's just a clay pipe that's 10 feet down that I try to keep clear. If you put anything heavy on that, you're just gonna crush that pipe. I think the pipe is 40 years old. I keep praying it stays there. And the only other way is off of Fisher Road, which is you have to go right over wetlands to do that, over wet areas, and almost like a pond area. So the only test holes you could do have to be by hand. So I just bring that up. The other part is one thing I heard again tonight, just repeating the hardship. He was given an offer to buy, someone wanted to buy the land more than he paid for it. I also is suggesting to him that he donate to Fitchburg Conservation to preserve the land. And I also spoke to him about, not to him directly, but you could donate the land to the Audubon Society and get a tax write-off. So the hardship was self-imposed. He was given a few doors to get out of it, and he chose not to use them. And the last thing I just want to say is, I think Mr. Wenzel sent you a video this week before the rains, and you can see that the water is still rolling over that hill where he wants to build. And the gentleman before, when we're talking to tonight, said it was a runoff melting from snow. There's no snow, and it's still running that water off the hill. And if you dig into that hole, that water's going to start cascading down into my property. And the last thing just I'll mention is I think it was Mr. Baker, who was a professor of the science of wetlands. He suggested that maybe that land is in the process of becoming wetlands. I forget what he called, the name of it he called, that type of soil. But he said it could be in a process because it's so wet, that the soil could be starting the process of becoming wetlands. So I just bring that up as another factor. Thank you for listening, and myself included, I hope you take a vote tonight, put this thing to rest.
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
Thank you.
Is the commission comfortable with closing the hearing, or do you want to continue? What would you like to do?
Motion to close.
Okay, so the hearing no more from the public. The chair closes the hearing for notice of intent, Leclerc, proposed single-family dwelling, 0 Ashby State Road. Do I have a motion?
Excuse me, is the only other person with us tonight Dr. Baker?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, that would require all 4 votes in the affirmative or the denial in order for it to pass. 4 is the majority of 7 in Conservation Commission. So.
Mm-hmm. Have you identified, I see you looking in a binder. Is that the local ordinance that you're looking at?
Yes, it is.
Can you review, do you have it with you?
No, but I want to know the answer.
Okay.
want to say?
No?
Well, you have the wetlands ordinance, and then you have the regulations that go along with that. But it does have, you know, the purpose, authority, intent of the ordinance in the first place. Back to what Tim was mentioning, though, I think in addition to finding reasons that it conflicts with the purpose of the local ordinance and of the ordinance's regulations, the mere lack of sufficient information is going to be pretty good to hang your hat on. I mean, I'm looking at the folder. Okay, so this was opened originally. This hearing was 9/28, and then 10/26, and then 11/10, and then 12/8, and then January 12th, February 9th, March 9th, and now tonight. Well, let's keep to this point. Okay, Chris. And in that time, I mean, we're 6 months in to this, more than that.
I want to move it forward, but don't lose sight of the fact that the applicant delayed us 60 to 90 days. So I still want to go forward, but it's not our delay.
It's not.
What I'd like to do is make a motion for, to draft a enforceable decision to deny the applicant. Based on this commissioner is unconvinced that the construction will not alter or obstruct the quiet enjoyment of the abutters for additional runoff. He hasn't answered the question of how you're going to handle the westerly runoff that will most assuredly affect the abutters.
Okay.
There was a motion.
Yes, I'm just waiting for you to write.
Oh, okay.
Do we have a second?
I guess I would like to amend what Mr. Donnelly has just said to add the idea that the applicant has not provided sufficient information, as has been pointed out, and furthermore, it strikes me that what is being proposed is technically impracticable because there's simply too much water coming down this property and in the environs to be handled with the system that is being proposed, in my opinion. And with the lack of information to support it, I would have to support the idea that it should be denied.
Did you get that? Okay, so do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we've got a second. Let's put it to a vote then. Commissioner Baker?
Nay? Well, I don't know whether, is this an aye or a nay? If we're supporting
The motion
Commissioner
was to deny,
Donnelly's
so
motion, I guess I should be saying aye.
Correct. Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Okay. Yeah.
Dr. Baker is an aye. Commissioner Christian?
Aye.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Helene has not entered the meeting?
No, I don't see your name.
Okay, Commissioner Sarahfield is aye.
If Helene's here, we
Yeah.
have 5.
She's not here?
No.
Okay, so we have 4.
So I was an aye.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tibb, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Tiff, a few minutes earlier, I just emailed the DPW Commissioner's comments to the only address I had right at short notice, which was Kyle Burchard. So if someone is getting his email while he is away or unavailable. But tomorrow, I'll make sure it's mailed to you as well. It's just a little hard to during a meeting like this when you're...
I don't believe we could have discussed about it without you first anyway. But I thank you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Yes, but the hearing's closed. It's all wrapped up and done with now. But yes, if you'd like to, Mr. That, I guess, yes, Michael?
And start digging holes. Can we contact the city and let you guys know that somebody's in their land, but can they go ahead and do that?
Well, backhoe is one thing. If we're talking like earlier, like Ralph had mentioned, digging things by hand, I mean, I suppose they're certainly willing to pursue the appeal, and they would need that kind of information.
Well, I think it's fine, just don't say backhoe, driving in on Sunday morning.
Yeah, if you see
You
the,
got our number.
yeah, give us a call.
What do I do? Said I don't do it.
Yeah, you give Michael a call, but I don't think that they should be doing that. It's my understanding.
Don't you need a permit? Like if you're going to do that, don't you need a permit?
Well, it depends what's alteration,
Yeah.
you know? Someone walking on with a shovel is one thing. If you see a bobcat or a backhoe, it's kind of another.
For my septic system, I needed a permit. They have to go into the whole thing.
The reason I asked him is because when you first got the property, 4 or 5 years ago, they cut the trees down left and right.
I think the answer will be, we will react and we won't assume.
Sure.
We will react to any action, but we're not going to assume that there will be a violation. Okay, so the burden would be on the abutters being the closest to I.
Send an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's nice to see you. Thank you so much for coming to these meetings. All right, moving forward. Good night. Let's see.
Stuck in this, we need to get...
Moving forward, under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 13, Section 40, the Fitchburg Conservation Commission will open the hearing for amended Order of Condition Number 155-684, Mad River Solar, Ashburnham Street, Proposed Restoration Plan.
Okay, let's go back to... Share two screens. All right, there are several folks that are here. First off, Attorney Barrett, I saw earlier. John, do you want to kind of lead things off here in the meantime?
Sure, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, John.
Okay. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair and members of the Commission, Mr. Hara and Mr. Smith. As you know, the Commission did a site visit about 10 days ago to the site. As a result, the Mad Rivers consultant, ERM, have made some modifications to their remediation plan. And I believe Mr. Smith has also made some revised suggestions of his recommendations to the Commission. So the matters before the Commission again tonight on the Mad Rivers request to amend the order of conditions to incorporate the change in circumstances due to the logging operation that affected the property. And I think that perhaps we could discuss Mr. Obviously with the Commission's permission, I guess I would suggest that we discuss Mr. Smith's recommendations as they might modify ERM's remediation plan. But before we did that, I don't know if Steve Holden is here or Evan Ehrlich. I'm not sure who else is here in this forum that they could give a maybe brief overview of the remediation plan. But however the commission wants to proceed with dealing with this.
Thank you, Attorney Barrett.
Madam Chair, I see a few of the folks that were with us before from ERM, Steve Holden and Evan, who was on the site walk. Evan Ehrlich.
Evan?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Holt, Mr. Ehrlich?
Yeah, or Steve, if you want to
Was it
chime
Holden?
in. Steve Holden, yeah.
Mr. Holden or Mr. Ehrlich?
Yeah, sure. This is Steve. Yeah, we could run through the plan, or I mean, if we want to just run through Mr. Smith's comments and some of our suggested clarifications to those comments, that would be helpful.
Or do we want to have Tim run through this, since they were Tim's comments?
Well, let me get up on the screen and figure out how to share it again.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm happy to go through the comments one by one. I do have a question though before we get started on the draft special conditions, and that is, so we've separated out the restoration of the 125-foot residential buffer zone, and on the site walk, we had discussed having the applicant approach the abutters about the screening. And there's a sense that it's really more the planning board's purview and jurisdiction and the Conservation Commission. But it is part of the 125-foot buffer was made part of the filing of the notice of intent. So if we could just get a quick update as to how that's progressing with the planning board, I think it would just be, it'd be good it'd be informational for the commission.
Well, on that, Tim, and everybody, I know Attorney Barrett will be requesting another extension to the planning board site plan review at their next meeting at the end of the month on the 26th. Yeah, so 3 weeks from now.
So it is progressing, Mike, is what you're saying?
Oh, right. And I guess the question not for this commission, but for the planning board is, are they comfortable with merely extending the site plan approval for this large-scale solar project? And actually another request that'll be on the same agenda up on Alpine Road, or should we go through the special permit process based on the change in the zoning ordinance that happened last year, which now requires large-scale solar arrays to get a special permit with a bit more teeth to it, rather than the non-discretionary site plan review. Frankly, I think the end result is really going to be the same, because the planning board would, I'm sure, defer in a lot of instances to this commission on how to treat the restoration of the wetlands, and based on what ERM has already proposed and is willing to do. So I think they would want to keep this moving in a timely manner so that the other folks at home and the folks who are sitting in the back of the room here can see some relief, and yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Mr.
Okay.
O'Hara. Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, so we'll start with the findings. I actually was not going to get into detail on the findings, but I do see that Mad River's got a few comments, so perhaps they could, I don't know if we can open those up, Mike, or one of the Mad River representation.
When I looked at it on my work laptop, if you hover over the little sticky notes here, yeah, but not this time. I don't know, Steve or Evan, can you kind of elaborate?
So it didn't.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, I wasn't able to read any of those comments in the Dropbox version of this document.
Yeah, in the PDF version, maybe somehow the Dropbox wiped out the ability to see that. Okay, how can we do this? And this is not the work laptop, so all I have is the materials that were put into the Dropbox.
Okay.
But again, Steve and Evan, if you have access to what Alexia had sent over with those little sticky notes and what the sticky notes say, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one there in number 2, it is just updating the name of the restoration plan, the wetland and upland buffer restoration plan, minor comment.
Yeah, it was Mad River Solar Holdings or something like that, LLC, and yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is the first comment. Yeah, the first comment is right to just change it to Mad River Solar Holdings LLC, is the full company name. And the second comment there is the one about just updating the name of the plan.
Okay. Moving on.
The next one is in the last draft of the plan, and like touched on earlier, we were removing the parts about planting the trees, and we'll be working with the planning commission, planning board directly on that. So we removed that portion of the mitigation from the restoration plan to focus on the resource areas under the jurisdiction of the commission.
Thank you. So I think that's all the comments on the findings. So moving to the draft special conditions. I'll wait until you get there, Mike.
Yep, we got to, well, that's not what I wanted to do, damn it.
So I'll start with special condition number 1. So the intent behind special condition number 1 is just to say that these conditions are in addition to the previously approved order of conditions. The order of conditions that was previously approved for this project still stand. These are just additional conditions. Item 2 basically states that before the solar array work is started, the restoration work has to be completed. And I see they have a comment about that. My guess is that they know they question what's substantially complete.
Right.
How do we define substantially complete? And I would simply say that it's substantially complete in the opinion of the Conservation Commission. The applicant at some point is going to have to submit a certificate of compliance to the Conservation Commission, and the commission at that time will make a determination if the project is substantially complete and that if they want to grant that certificate of compliance. I don't know if there's any questions or comments on that stance.
I mean, is that, are we talking about the debris cleaned up where it will be and the seed installed, or are we talking about the 80% aerial coverage of the seed? Or I guess it's more of a timing thing than that we want to get clarification on. Is substantially complete a full growing season after it's been reseeded and restored, or when is substantially complete?
So good question. I think the commission has to answer that, but I can tell you what my intent was. All too often we see where, for example, there's a wetlands replication proposed, and the project goes forward and the wetland replication gets put off to the end, and then a lot of times the replication doesn't even happen. From experience, what I found, it's important to put the requirement, make sure that the ecological restoration or replication occurs before a project can move forward. Otherwise, it's it just simply may not happen. So that's the intent of that condition, but I don't know how the commissioners feel about it.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Attorney Barrett.
Thank you. I just would like to ask on this point that as far as prior to the start of the construction of the solar array, if Tim could clarify that a little bit in terms of, in my opinion, that means certainly the solar array panels don't go up, but part of the construction, I think, is the expectation that the drainage work is going to need to be done. Excuse me if I'm not using the technically correct terms here, but you know, the detention ponds or whatever that are going to mitigate any water runoff. So I'm not sure how that fits into the restoration of the site being substantially completed, if it anticipates that type of work could start in order to, again, mitigate the problems with the runoff.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? We want to get that restoration work started as soon as possible. Most of the restoration work, right, is going to be putting down a wetland seed mix. And I think everybody's aware that it's the chance of success of germination of that seed and successful replanting is much better in the spring than in the summer. And it really shouldn't take a long time to do, right? To do that planting and to get and to blow mulch. The rutting, there's a lot of rutting that needs to be restored, but again, I don't see that work taking more than a month or two. And again, the intent is to start this spring, so.
I think that would be, if that is the intent, you know, if substantially complete includes those activities, you know, preparing, backfilling the ruts, you know, and planting the seed and throwing down the mulch where necessary. If that's the, you know, the threshold for meeting that substantially complete, then rather than, you know, some level of veg cover or aerial coverage of the seeds, you know, germination of the seed, some percentage there, which is included in the plan. But if we're talking just about the first stage and implementation of the measures, if that's the intent of that comment or that condition, that would be helpful to clarify.
Yeah, I don't know, again, how do the commissioners feel about that? Because they're going to come to you at some point in the near future, hopefully, ideally, and say, hey, we think we're substantially complete. We'd like to get started on a solar array. What you're finding, and I guess for me, if the commission were to say, okay, Tim, what do you think? I'd want to go out and I would want to see at least some germination and things starting to progress, as opposed to going out and maybe seeing that there was no germination taking place, or the seed had germinated, but because it wasn't watered, and there were drought conditions, it had died off. So you just want to start seeing vegetation start to become established. I don't think anybody is thinking that we're going to wait the full 2 years to see that the restoration was 100% complete. And earlier I talked to Tracy a little bit about this, and Tracy's comment was, yeah, I'd like to see it like, I think, Tracy, what did you say, 95% complete?
Well, when I think of substantial, I would think of something along the lines of 90 to 95% would be substantial. When I consider just the general meaning of the word substantial, that was where I went with it.
If I may jump in.
Go ahead, Dr. Baker.
When Tim refers to near-term planting of seed, mulching, correction of rutting, I would like to see the correction of the rutting in the near term, and I'm talking in the next, couple of months, include doing something about the way that the skid road, the main skid road that comes down the hill, is concentrating flow. And as Tim mentioned at the very end, I guess it's number 13, that the runoff flowing down those rutted areas needs to be dispersed rather than be concentrated. And that can be done in a variety of ways, but some attention needs to be put to those ways, such as by putting in water bars or wattles, or just moving some of the material around so that instead of the water following down that long skid road, it gets moved to the side in a number of places. I don't see any reason to wait, a couple of years to begin that kind of work. Now we can see your little yellow tab.
Yeah, I went back
just then.
and retrieved the original email. That worked.
Okay,
Converting
thank you.
it to the Dropbox has screwed it up somehow.
All right.
So I think you're getting a sense of what the commission, how the commission views substantially complete. I don't think anybody is going to want to wait 2 years until everything's been successfully revegetated. And there are other provisions to ensure that successful revegetation occurs. So it's just to make sure that that the restoration, that the rutting is corrected, the seeds put down, that you've taken all the steps that you can to complete the restoration work.
Madam Chair, this is John Barrett.
Yes, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you. I just wonder if, I'm not sure if other people are seeing this, but Alexia O'Brien from ERM is posting some questions from time to time. I'm not sure if other people have seen those. I think the question about what is substantial she raised, I think that's been addressed by the chair and Mr. Smith, but I wonder if it's possible for Tim to, in his recommendation to, I guess, I'm a little bit fuzzy about what exactly is considered the things that need to be done for restoration and what are things that are, well, I guess I'm just fuzzy about what you see is needed to be done for restoration, for that question of has substantial completion occurred. Is it possible to identify that in like a paragraph, Tim, or is it identified by the paragraphs of the, or is it the whole thing? I guess I'm just trying to better understand that.
Let me turn it around. How would you suggest that the commission defines substantially complete?
It's not so much, I think that's ultimately going to be up to the commission. But I just wonder what things do we need to do in terms of the restoration activities?
What we could do, instead of saying substantially complete, we could say a partial certificate of compliance is issued for the restoration work. That's a very definitive condition, right? There's no question whether or not the commission's issued a partial certificate of compliance. There's no ambiguity that way, and because I think that's what the concern is, that partially complete is, or substantially complete is somewhat ambiguous. Well, why don't I just strike substantially complete and state that once a partial certificate of compliance is issued for the restoration work.
That's a good idea.
Well, I guess that brings us back to the same question, though. I mean, what are the criteria needed to get that partial approval?
Partial certificate of compliance. So the commission, the commissions across the Commonwealth routinely issue certificates of compliance for every project. So it's a well-documented process, and I would just refer to the applicant to the regulations on issuing a certificate of compliance.
John Barrett, going back to one note that you mentioned earlier, I'm not sufficiently versed in here, but in this the Zoom platform to see the notes, but I see Alexia's hand is up, so if she has something to just verbalize instead of reading from the chat room.
Hi, this is Alexia. I'm on the ERM team as well, and you can see my comments on this document are shown here, and I just wanted to let John know. Those are actually comments that were made and submitted, John, and they're just popping up as the cursor hovers over them.
Oh,
but I actually had those yellow ones.
Oh.
So there aren't new comments, but I also, sorry, were you saying something? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm just saying, okay, and now I understand where it's coming from.
Okay. My other comment was related to what was just mentioned about a partial certificate of compliance. And I was wondering if it might not help to specify the activities that need to be done for this to be considered substantial. And it seems like it could be appropriate to have the logging debris removal, the rut backfilling, and the seeding complete.
Ms. O'Brien, do you think you could turn your microphone up, or?
You know, it is all the way up. I was trying to do that before I raised my hand, so apologies if it's not coming through.
Oh, that's better now.
Yeah, that's better. Could you repeat your last statement about the partial order of partial certificate of compliance?
Yep, I was just wondering if it might make sense to actually put into these special conditions a detailed list of the activities that would be considered substantially complete once done, which might be the logging debris removal, the rut backfilling, and the seeding, since that seems like something that we could get in there as soon as possible to address. And then the revegetation and assessment of stabilization would come later for the final completion of this effort. So I just didn't know if that might be helpful to actually list out the actual activities.
Yeah, I'd like that. And then you have a checklist.
Yeah.
You know, the things to check off in order to, whether it's substantial or not, substantially complete or not.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien.
Thank you.
Would you or somebody at ARM mind like compiling such a list of activities?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I was thinking, I was just referring back to the list that's actually provided in the plan.
Okay.
So there's a checklist in the plan?
So there's a table. Table 1 has the proposed restoration activities by resource area. So we have that logging debris removal, rut backfilling, and seeding, both in the riverfront area and those wetland buffers as well as wetlands.
That was further back in the restoration plan itself.
Yeah, so I would just comment that there are a number of instances where I use the phrase substantially complete, and it's really to ensure that the restoration plan gets successfully implemented. I'm okay in some instances with defining substantially complete as the applicant's representative has indicated, but let's take a scenario that the applicant has done all the grading, the applicant has done the seeding, put down hay mulch, done everything, but we're in drought conditions in the summer, and all the seed has died. The mulch has decomposed, and we're getting runoff from the site because the soils still aren't stabilized. They're not vegetated, and the hay, which is going to decompose quite quickly in the summer months, And if you have those exposed soils and are not stabilized, now we're left with a mess, a problem. And so I think that's a scenario I'm concerned about, and I want to make sure that the order of conditions doesn't leave the commission susceptible to being in that bad position. Right? The commission's got an interest in seeing the successful completion of the restoration. And a lot of these conditions are, that's the intent, is to make sure that happens. Why don't we just continue to move forward, and we can come back to this if we want. And I would also remind the commission that this is the commission's decision, and there doesn't have to be consensus on it with the applicant. The commission, at the end of the day, can make the decision, although I totally agree that it's useful to get the applicant's input. So I'll just move on, and then we can always come back to this one. So item number 3, a schedule of, item number 3 really asks for a schedule for the restoration, and the applicant has agreed to this. And again, I use that term substantially complete, and it's substantially complete before November 30th, 2022. And the reason I picked that date is really, we want to make sure this restoration is completed during the growing season. And, but again, it's understood that, at least I understand, and maybe this is where we can add some wording. It is possible that in November we go and we see that a lot of the seed mix, the wetland seed mix, didn't germinate, and then we would ask the applicant to put down more seed mix. And let me see. So yeah, so there were some comments by the applicant, and I can't see what the comments are.
Here you go.
Please clarify. Okay, it's another issue about substantially complete. In the following line, the Conservation Commission will provide a letter to Mad River Holdings certifying the terms of the condition have been met. And so this is one where it would really help to, because that's exactly what a certificate of compliance does, right? It's the commission acknowledging that they complied with the order conditions. So I would be in favor, very much in favor of referring to a partial certificate of compliance, which is exactly what the applicant is looking for. Item 4 is just stating that a qualified wetland scientist should oversee the work. Item 5, the wetland scientist needs to report quarterly to the commission, so the commission can see that the project is progressing, and quarterly, just because even if the applicant hasn't done anything in the quarter, the commission wants to know that. So getting regular, reasonable intervals for reporting until the restoration is completed. Item number 6 refers to that. So to be successful, right, sometimes you need to water the seed, so there may be some maintenance required. And also acknowledging that if the seed does not take, that the applicant's going to go back and reseed prior to the next growing season. Item number 7 refers to, is trying to qualify what is ultimately what is final completion of the restoration work. What does it need to be to considered 100% complete? And to be 100% complete, we need at least 80% of the restoration area needs to be have established vegetation within two growing seasons. And Alexa writes, please confirm restoration areas refers to seeding in the wetland buffer and riverfront. And I would agree with that statement.
Wait, hold on, one more.
Yep. Please clarify commission definition, healthy and established, recommend revision, aerial coverage of non-invasive Plant species meets or exceeds 80% soils are stable with no major areas of erosion observed. And I would agree with that statement as well. Okay, moving on to item 8. The Conservation Commission reserves the right to require the planting of native shrubs and trees within resource areas of sufficient revegetation does not occur. And part of this, so the applicant is putting down a native seed mix, but they're not planting. And the reason why they're not planting any trees or shrubs is because they're saying, hey, there's some existing rootstock. There's the stumps are going to sprout. There's tubers in the ground that'll all naturally come up. And I actually had been reading on, doing some reading on successful logging operations, and apparently there's a lot of unsuccessful, for various reasons. There's a lot of unsuccessful logging operations. Unsuccessful in that the forest doesn't naturally regenerate properly. So I wanted to make sure the commission reserved the right, if the commission went and saw that it was still, it was a desert, everything, because they cut so much growth that, and I don't see this as an issue, because at the end of the day, right, there's going to be, at least not in the wetlands, but there's going to have the solar panels. But what if because now you're exposing the wetland areas to direct sunlight, where before it was shaded, wetland plant species don't come up, because all the wetland plant species were shade tolerant species, and now it's in total sunlight. So the trees and shrub layers don't grow. Then the commission may want to say, hey, you know what, we need to establish some additional shrub growth. So therefore, we're gonna require shrub plantings. So that's the intent of item 8, and let's look at what the applicant says. Will sufficient revegetation refer to the following definition: aerial coverage of non-invasive plants, meets or exceeds 80%, soils are stable with no major areas of erosion observed. So I would agree with that. My only, so you could have 80%. The herbaceous layer, right, is well established, but you don't have the shrub layer or the trees haven't started to grow, and so the wetland has been restored, but it's a very different kind of wetland than before the logging operation took place. I know that's an issue with, for example, when you replicate a wetland, you need to replicate, when you alter a wetland and you do a replication plan, it's not just replicating a wetland, it's replicating the wetland that was disturbed and lost. So I think that the applicant's recommendation is a good one, but again, it doesn't address the whole issue of what if it's just the herbaceous layer that is exceeds 80% coverage, and you don't have that shrub or tree layer which existed before the logging operation took place. I'm just going to move ahead because we got a lot to get through tonight. Number 9, just is saying that the proposed seeding mix is acceptable, and that's what the applicant has proposed really is a best management practice. Item number 10 is saying that, hey, that if so, one of the, as part of the what is it? I'm trying to think of the NEPDES, the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Act. If you're going to disturb more than an acre of land in Massachusetts or any other state, you've got to file a SWIP plan. A SWIP plan is a stormwater pollution prevention plan, and a SWIP plan really is, it's like an erosion sedimentation control plan, essentially. And so, and there are reporting requirements, federal reporting requirements for the success of the SWIP plan. And what condition number 10 says is when you report to the federal government or the DEP, you also report to the local conservation commission. Item number 11, during the restoration work. So so we don't want them to, so there was a skidder in the wetlands. We don't want them to bring in heavy equipment and re-rut the wetlands. And the way they do that is they put down these large timber mats, and the large timber mats displace the weight of the heavy equipment. There is a best management practice for installing timber mats, and it was developed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So condition number 11 requires that they follow those standards as established by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And it also requires that the conservation agent or its designee first approve the siting of, or the placement of timber matting. Timber matting is also, by the way, called swamp matting. Item number 12. Actually, we got a lot of really good feedback from the abutters, a lot of good input from the abutters. And one of the abutters said, you know, we really should have a contact information. If we see, for example, if there's a bulldozer and it's in the wetlands, it can happen, and it's good to be able to call. Maybe the applicant doesn't even know about it, and it's good to have a phone number and a contact. Condition number 12 requires that information be provided up front. Item number 13. Item number 13 is, Ralph already alluded to this condition, so it's really in two parts. The first part is before you put in the solar, and again, this was input from an abutter, and it's something that the Conservation Commission routinely does with other projects. And it basically says, before you put in the solar panels, or before you put in the impervious area that's gonna create all the runoff, make sure you have a place for the water to go. So install your drainage system before you install that, before you create all this impervious area. So that's the first half of condition 13. The second half of it is we've got a problem today, right now, before any impervious area has ever been placed on the site, simply because the logging operation left these large ruts, and these large ruts are intercepting all the water that's flowing on the hillside. They're intercepting the water, and they're channelizing the water and concentrating the water flow. And we know that when you concentrate the water flow of water, that's when you get scouring and erosion. So there are techniques, there are best management practices, such as installing water bars or silt wattles that we can use to level spread the water, or to prevent the water from concentrating. So as more immediately, those BMPs should be installed right away, well, as part of the restoration work. And item 13, Alexia says, please clarify what the commission considers substantial. So it says substantial. Okay, prior to installation of solar arrays, the drainage system shall be substantially complete. So in this instance, again, I would agree with the applicant. We could just say, so again, the intent is that so there's the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act, right? One of the interests is storm damage prevention, and the other one is flood control, right? So we want to ensure that there's going to be a lot of impervious area added to the site. We have a lot of water flowing off the site. We want to ensure that the neighbors and the abutters don't incur storm damage. So the intent is to make sure that we have a drainage system that can accommodate the additional flow of water. We have a lot less water sinking into the ground because of those solar panels, and that water that was sinking in the ground is now flowing off the site. So we need to be able to accommodate it, so the drainage system needs to be in place. And that's what I mean by substantially complete. It's got to be able to accommodate the flow of water. And I don't know if the app, go ahead.
If we could phrase it like that, you know, is installed to a level to accommodate the additional flow or along those lines, I think that would be helpful, because I agree. I mean, it needs to be roughed in to a certain stage to be able to at least flow the water until, you know, the permanent controls can be finished and it can be dealt with in a more permanent manner. But if the threshold can be, you know, installed to a level to accommodate the you know, additional flow from, you know, the cleared areas or to be cleared areas for the solar arrays, then that would be
sure.
Much better from our perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we actually have another project we're going to be talking about later on tonight, where they built the subdivision road, and they didn't build the drainage system, and now the neighboring abutter is getting flooded because they built the road, they increased the runoff by installing the road, and there was no provision to handle that additional runoff. So. Yeah, no, I think that's a good suggestion. Item 14. Item 14 is, again, this is something that the commission has done in the past, is ask the applicant to provide a security guarantee in the form of a bond or a bank book, and that the money would be held in escrow to ensure the successful completion of the work. And then when the commission issued the certificate of compliance, they would release that bond. And the bond amount, the city would consult with the city engineer to calculate the amount of the performance guarantee. Are there any questions on that? Yes. Alexa says, following the confirmation from the Conservation Commission that special condition number 3 has been met, the performance bond will be released. Item 3 being the schedule of the restoration. Work shall be completed by the applicant. So I guess I don't, item number 3 doesn't have, item number 3 says as follows. A schedule of the restoration shall be provided by the applicant. Restoration activities shall commence spring of 2022 and be substantially complete before November 30th, 2022, which is the growing season, right? The commission shall consider issuing an enforcement order and fines if it finds a good faith effort was not made to complete restoration during the 2022 growing season. So it says that the restoration needs to be done before November 30th, 2022, but it doesn't. So are you proposing that the commission just release the surety after November 30th, 2022?
The intent was, if that statement in the comment there was added to that number 3 about the certificate of compliance being issued once the terms have been met, I think it's more connected to that.
Okay. And I'm fine with that after a certificate of compliance is issued. Because again, the certificate of compliance really is the formal way for the commission to say, yes, this work has been successfully completed. Item number 15, and item number 15 is just acknowledging that the applicant is working with the planning board to address the screening for abutters and complying with the zoning regulations. And that is the end of the order of the draft special order conditions. Any comments or concerns or anything that the commissioners want to go back to?
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Commissioner Donnelly, did you have a comment?
Not earth-shattering. Hey, number 13, they were looking for alternate language to substantially completed, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but functioning is, I'd like to simply add functioning to the drainage system, number 13. And then as concerns number 15, definitive restoration required, key elements of that restoration plan, all, I would hope that the Conservation Commission would relay their support for number 15, in addition to key elements of that restoration plan, and share them with the planning board on April 26th.
Stop by. It'll be in this room.
I'll speak for Michael Donnelly. I would hope that the Conservation Commission would support that
Do you want a
comment.
letter?
Excuse me?
Do you want a letter to the planning
Well,
board?
they may not believe me. But I do believe
This is on
we
the
can influence their
26th.
decision, and I'd like to influence their decision.
Commissioner Christian, any comment?
Oh, I'm good.
Commissioner Baker?
I had to unmute. Yeah, I'd support our putting together a letter that would go to the planning board in support of item 15, for sure.
Do you have any further comments?
I got a hint that when we were on 14, a security guarantee and a bond, and then we referred back to number 3, I got a hint that perhaps they're looking for a bond to be satisfied and returned on November 30, 2022, and I don't think that that's the case. I think there's going to be a year or two window to see that all is established before that bond is released. I just want to clarify that.
I agree
And
with...
I was thinking exactly the same thing as what Commissioner Donnelly said. It isn't necessarily going to be done at the end of that 1 year, because there's a possibility that they may have to replant.
I agree.
Any comments? Mike, were all of, is it Alexi? Were all those comments in writing? Do you have those in writing, Mike? I think it's quite a burden on you to take the responses from the applicant to Tim's recommendations and record them verbatim, and that's part of the public record, and that's quite a burden on you. If they're all up there and they're in writing, if you have them in writing, then they can just be entered, but
Right.
right now, we're looking at Alexia O'Brien's comment. You have that in writing. Oh, excuse me, that's...
We're looking at, there's got to be a way of grabbing this, and I won't even attempt to do it now. I'll get more technical help. Just copy that, and, paste it into...
Well, for you to get verbatim her comment and Tim's response, et cetera, I think it's it's burdensome. If you do it, you're good, but, and having it in writing, I think is very
There's
important.
always the recording of this meeting, too, which is fascinating TV, by the way. You should
Past
really
practice
try it,
has
Mike.
been that the applicant would comment on Tim's comments, and we discuss them, but they'd be in writing, and they'd be part of the public record.
Yeah.
And that's past practice, and it's work.
Yep.
I will agree with Commissioner Donnelly on that issue, that transparency is one of the most important aspects of what we do in our meetings, and I would agree. And also, I had one comment. This is for number 8. The planting that they are, when we were on that site visit, I noticed right when we first came out there in that first area there, there had been maybe 6 to 8 inches of organic matter that had been moved and placed on top of what would have been the soil layer that was there and before the logging. And I'm going to suggest that not much is going to grow up through 6 to 8 inches of organic matter that's placed on top of it. That's why we, get rid of our weeds using like paper bags and stuff, because it blocks everything from, and mulch too. I mean, that's what we're doing. So I don't want us to move forward leaning on the fact that everything's going to spring right up, because if you cover it up, what's going to come through there but Oriental bittersweet, or, these invasive species that are designed to do that. You're looking at me. Yes.
I think what you're saying is they didn't disturb the area enough, and it needs further disturbance.
Well, no, I'm just suggesting that there's not much that's going to come up through there. Now, there might have been roots and organisms in the organic matter that was put on top of that, and certainly something could grow up out of that.
Well,
but
maybe, Steve, could you speak to that? If there's areas where there had been stockpile or
this wasn't a
piles of...
stockpiling. This,
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's part of the consideration and restoration, and even, why, wood chipping on the site would be limited, because we don't want to cover the soils and not allow, seed to take. Some of those areas where the wetland scientist on site, determines that, and some of these areas are really good wildlife habitat, some of those stockpiles of woody debris. But if it is just piles of, other organic matter that was pushed aside or displaced during the logging, the idea would be to backfill that to where it was, or remove any of that excess debris that isn't really serving a wildlife benefit and would just be preventing either native revegetation or preventing the successful germination of the seeds that are thrown down.
And
so I think that's certainly a consideration.
To the chair's point, I mean, that certainly should be something that was checked on prior to even considering the partial certificate of compliance, right?
It's in the applicant's best, it's in the applicant's best interest to address yours, rather than pay for regeneration, allow it to occur naturally. It's in his best interest to remove what would deter or slow down regeneration.
Agreed. Yeah, we want to establish that vegetation for erosion control for a whole slew of reasons. So, if there are conditions there that are preventing revegetation or preventing planting, in those select areas that aren't providing or that would provide wildlife benefits, then yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's in the the applicant's benefit to clean up those areas and have a good base for that revegetation to occur.
okay. Have we gotten through the comments portion of the draft order of condition?
Madam Chair, if I might, John Barrett, just one little point in Article or Section 15. I think in its original, and I think that's what we had here, is the original says under 15B, hazardous trees, and I think that was intended to mean removal of hazardous trees. Is that right?
That's correct, John.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Just to clarify that.
Thank you, Attorney Barrett. So do we have any more comments from the commission? Okay, hearing none from the commission, we do have some abutters in attendance. Do we have any abutters that are waiting patiently and remote?
I don't recognize the names. Oh, other than Tom de Neuville. Sorry, I didn't. Your name was there before, Tom. Sorry. I don't know if you had anything to say, or if anyone else.
Thank you. No, I'm just listening.
Gotcha.
Thank you for attending tonight, Mr. de Neuville.
If there's anyone else under the attendee list that wants to say something, please raise your hand, because I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Hearing none from the remote parties, we have 2 abutters in attendance. If you'd like to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. And once again, if you have comments that are new to the conversation, please share them with us. Otherwise, any comments that have been made before we have already been entered into the public record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Joyce Jacobs, 778 Ashburnham Street, Fitchburg. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that was in attendance at the site walk a couple of weeks ago. It was good that you got a chance to see what the site actually looks like and what it will take to restore the site before we can proceed with the original solar plan. So thank you very much. I have reviewed, and we just did review Mr. Smith's recommendations for how to amend the order of conditions. I fully support that, as long as all of Mr. Smith's recommendations are accepted into that amendment. We do look forward to going on to the next step with the planning board and talking about restoring the 125-foot buffer that was disturbed. A little disappointed to hear that that is going to be deferred from the planning board's next meeting, so.
Oh, no, it's on. the
That is going to be
26th.
on the agenda for the next meeting? I thought, I'm sorry, then I misunderstood something there. So we will look forward to working with the planning board. With that, if we would ask this commission to support us by submitting a letter, possibly to the planning board with your recommendations, suggestions on how to restore the 125-foot buffer, including the points in Mr. Smith's plan here that talks about the addition of the arborvitae to be planted as a screening. We would ask that that arborvitae be a species that is deer resistant in order to maintain that screening, because deer love arborvitae and they'll have those dispensed in a year. Also, the plan that's listed here is we would just want to make sure that the addition of the arborvitae is not solely what we would consider to be proper screening. We would like to also include in that plan native species that we had talked about, including hardwoods that were taken during the logging, and that should be part of the restoration plan. And again, lastly, what we just touched on, or Mr. Barrett touched on, the hazardous trees, which would mean removal, and designated that there are several in several locations of trees that were left standing by the logging that neighbors and abutters are very concerned with, of them coming down on our properties. So I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Karen Capone, 696 Ashburnham Street. I would also like to thank the commission for coming out to view the property. The only new information I have is about the trees, the hazardous trees, because they're falling, and they're close to the house. So I don't know, I know this is out of your jurisdiction, but does the planning board move quickly on this? Because
I would think they would be deciding one way or the other on the 26th.
okay, great, because that's what I'm most concerned about now is the trees, because there's about 3 that have, well, halfway over behind my property. And one has fallen across the, since has fallen across the path leading from my house. It was a dead tree, though, but it was.
Could I ask, when we had a few days ago, that really windy day, and there was a lot of trees, go up by Marshall Farm, on either side, there was a lot of tree damage done there. Did that cause any tree falling?
I only saw one which was dead, that fell. But I'm just concerned because I see them swaying. They're really, really spindly because there's just so much more wind coming through that area now that the trees have been cut. So if that, I just would advocate, same as what Joyce had said, that if you could, which I think you would, support us in number 15 to the planning board.
I think she's worrying needlessly. It's a northwest wind up there. The trees will go away from her house, not onto her house.
All right, I'll hold you to that. But thank you very much.
You're welcome. Do you think, thank you, Mrs. Caponi. Can we forward the draft of the draft order, or can we forward the order, the special conditions to the planning department? Or do you think we need a letter, I mean, that goes along with it, or I'm just trying to...
Let's talk outside of this, and we can incorporate a lot of what Tim had suggested tonight in what is sent to the planning board for a couple of weeks from now.
Okay.
Could I make a motion to draft an order of conditions with the Tim's recommendations for the project, Mad River Solar? And the outstanding thing that I see is a bond amount from the city engineer.
I suggest let's back up and close the hearing.
Close the
again.
hearing, and then, yes, just one
That was a
second.
suggestion, not a
Okay,
motion.
thank you. So, hearing no more from the public,
Well, sorry, in deference to the attorney representing in, I'm sorry, Stephen, at ERM, do you folks have anything else to add before closing the hearing?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the only thing I think we sort of went through on Tim's modifications, there were two things that ERM had suggested be stricken, and I just want to clarify whether those were to be stricken. It was in number 3, the restoration plan proposes the following, and I think ERM suggested that the 125-foot no disturbance residential buffer would be stricken. And then in paragraph 3G, revegetation, native shrubs and trees will be planted in areas of the disturbed residential buffer. That was stricken also. Is that the intent here?
I think that was
Yes.
agreed to earlier, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Good.
Then with that, I don't know if Steve or Evan have anything else to add. I would just state, I do appreciate the Conservation Commission's help in working this out. A large hand of thanks must be extended to the neighbors who have been very gracious and interested and involved in providing good ideas to make this matter correct the problems that this situation has caused. And just want to thank you for your time and especially Mr. O'Hara for your help in trying to get this matter resolved too.
okay. So hearing no more from the public, the chair
Oh,
closes.
sorry, just, if I could real quick, the only one I had penciled, I had a note for was the number 2, the substantially complete. Did we, I know we had talked about having a punch list of, what constituted substantially complete or what activity, what parts of the restoration plan. Is that something we can clarify now, or how would we best proceed on that?
Mike, were you able to find the table? Didn't, Ms.
okay.
O'Brien said there was a table?
Right. We had that before, and then we had to get, okay. Steve, do you want to help me out here? Is it the list of species, or?
That was the work that we expected them to do.
I think with the table, and Alexia, jump in if you're thinking of something different, but the table we're thinking about is that first one there that just lists the activities in each resource area. Let's see, right there, I believe. That's right.
This?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
So, right, so that if logging debris removed, backfilling and seeding and mulching in place, you know, if that would constitute for that particular condition, that would constitute, you know, substantially complete.
So the only thing I would interject is that I'd want to make sure that a representative of the Conservation Commission had inspected that work and was satisfied that work had been completed successfully.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
sure. Does that clear it up,
Commission
Steve?
agrees by nodding their heads. Just giving you a chance to write.
Oh, no, go.
Okay, so the hearing no more, the chair closes the hearing for notice of intent. This is the amended order of conditions number 155-684, Mad River Solar, Ashburnham Street proposed restoration plan. We have gone through with the special order of conditions. Do we have anything that,
Now is the time for a motion.
now, do we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
I'm going to the next item here, sorry.
Thank you. Do we have the motion?
What's the matter with him making a motion? The quiet guy over there.
It's better to be quiet, you don't have to take anything back.
So I get the big mouth?
No
I
comment.
would entertain, would you entertain a motion for accepting for issuing an order of conditions with the special, boilerplate with the special conditions that our agent has provided? And can you add to that, Mr. Christian?
No, Mike.
Okay. Happy to have the good doctor amend my motion, if he so chooses.
Well, sure, Mike. I think that the thing that's missing is that, if I remember right, we're going to be waiting for the DPW Commissioner Erickson to come up with an amount.
Actually, while we're on that, there were some comments that I received earlier from Nick. Actually, let me just go to Nick's email from late. Okay, Mad River. Oh, let me share. Time to share again. That one, yes. Okay. Please
Forgiven.
get that a little bit, zoom in a bit. Basically, it's, oh, God. Make one false move and that's kind of small. If you have trouble, don't have much to add beyond Tim's. In general, restoration plan provides guidelines and procedures that, if followed, will likely produce successful restoration. However, plan lacks specificity and detail, leaves a large margin for error. On-site review will certainly help. Suggest following flagging in an on-site review, which we've had. Maybe Nick wasn't aware of that a couple of Saturdays ago. Applicant prepare a more detailed planting plan. But I think we've kind of handled that tonight.
So we just need a bond amount.
Yeah, like
We can
for
refer
the-
that to Commissioner Erickson.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, per item 14, in the special conditions, it calls for the city engineer to calculate the amount of the performance guarantee. So that should be part of Commissioner Donnelly's motion, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Baker.
So I'll second it on that condition.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Let's call a vote. All in favor? Dr. Baker?
Aye.
Commissioner Christian?
Aye.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarfield, aye. Motion passes.
It's 4.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation in this over the last couple weeks and the last few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Commissioner members.
Okay, let's move forward then. Under Massachusetts, can we move forward?
Please do.
Thank you. Under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 13, Section 40, the Fitchburg Conservation Commission will open the hearing for notice of intent, KCMC Management, proposed demolition of existing building and construct new drive-through only Dunkin' Donuts, 105 John Fitch Highway.
And we...
Who do we have speaking
see if
for
we
the
have Mr. Hannigan
notice of intent?
is still here. Yep, you are.
I'm still here.
Thank you, Mr. Hannigan.
How are you?
All right, let me get to that item so I can share it on the screen.
Did you want me to share anything, Mike?
Just give me 1 sec, and here we go. Here's the dunks. Is there a particular, I think we go straight to the site plan, Bill.
Sounds good.
Go straight to the...
Well, if you could go to the existing conditions plan.
Sorry, I didn't get... Say that...
Where we are.
Say that again, Bill, I didn't quite...
The existing conditions plan?
Okay, gotcha. Page 2. And then we share. And share. Okay, let me blow it up, Bill. Actually, let me get the screen.
That's blown up?
We're not quite there.
Here we go.
Trying to do a couple things at once, Bill. Okay.
For clarification, it's the jewelry store?
Most recently, a
Former
mattress
jewelry
store.
Mattress store.
Is it a mattress store?
Yeah.
It's in front of the building there. There's that little outbuilding.
Out front.
It's got like glass,
Out
all
front.
kinds of glass.
Okay, so it was the jewelry store.
Yeah, the jewelry store.
It's been many things over the years.
Now it's mattress?
It was.
Oh, it was mattress behind as well, okay. Gotcha, good. Good.
It's for the record, Bill Hannigan with Hannigan Engineering, representing KCMC for this project. The existing conditions are kind of important because it shows where we started. The wetlands were delineated by Chuck Karen. There's an isolated wetland to the immediate, I'm going to say west on the plan view. I guess would be southwest. And then to the immediate west on the St. Bernard's land, there's another wetland system that picks up a lot of runoff from the parking lot of the activity center and directs that to an existing drainage line which goes from essentially underneath the power lines underneath the ground.
So you're talking here?
Yeah, that's the pipe.
Okay.
Good. So that picks up the drainage. So on our site right now, we have a couple of catch basins that are plugged into this drainage line as well, along with some street drainage that plugs into it from John Fitch Highway. There are a couple of, one comment from the planning department is what's the pipe going into the catch basin in that area, and that appears to be potentially a foundation drain for the existing building. So the proposal right now, the product is essentially the site is completely paved. What we're looking at doing is doing a new building on the property. We'd be knocking down the building, creating some new parking areas and basically retooling the site. If you remember correctly, this same group came in for a project down the corner of John Fitch and Lunenburg Street, 580 John Fitch Highway. They have since withdrawn that proposal from the planning board, and I think an order was issued, so it might just some cleanup stuff at some point. We're going to have to basically issue a request a certificate for that one for never starting to work. But if you could jump to now the site plan.
Oh, that's the demo sheet.
That's the demolition plan. So that outlines the pavement areas that we're going to be taking down, the construction entrance, the installation of the erosion control, consisting of straw wattles and staked silt fence around that perimeter area. So that would protect us. So all the wetlands basically is to the west and to the north of the property, but we would take care of that as part of it in the initial construction. From there on the site plan, you can see that the existing building is gone. We're proposing a drive-through only Dunkin' Donuts facility at this location. This would allow the requisite number of cars to be queued, both from the Dunkin' standards as well as the City of Fitchburg standards. We have received approval from the planning board for this project. So the overall impact of the project is positive from a perspective of stormwater runoff as well as conservation. There's the systems that were on the plan or on the project for drainage were really in no way compliant with current standards. We're basically eliminating the drainage that's on the site, disconnecting that connection to the existing 36-inch RCP. I believe it's 36, it might be 48. Sorry, yeah, it's 36. So that drainage system would be rebuilt. We would be then picking up a portion of the drainage system from the rear property. The rear property, with us placing an island between us and them for their use. There's that island up there. This landscaped island will be up there. Would basically limits the traffic to one curb cut to our site and one curb cut to theirs. But what happens is the stormwater that's flowing over land to the existing catch basins would be basically picked up by that curb, running through the gutter, and on the right side, Mike, just above your cursor, there is a catch basin that we would be installing. There'd be a new catch basin there that would pick up the existing runoff from the site, from the rear site, and pipe that over to eventually to a water quality device prior to discharge to the drain system in the street. On the upper left, there's overland flow that would then go into a settling area. That's not to be considered an infiltration basin, but more or less a grass area that can be used to collect and provide some measure of remedial infiltration, rise up to a beehive grate and basically plug into the drainage system, which then would be, once again, all connected out to the front and routed to that same connection across the street. The other catch basins on the site are merely picking up the new drainage and grading from the parking areas, from the driveway entrances. There will be a main entrance where the car traffic would come in, and they would go to the drive-through lane. There would be an escape lane as well just north of that. That would allow people to get by if they just went in line and said the line's too long, I can get out. They have the ability to do so. That's part of the regulations within the City of Fitchburg zoning. The other parking would be basically for employees, and there is going to be a walk-up service window on the right side of the building. So they could come to there, they could park, and this is really for people who are ordering by the app. They could order by the app, come park in the parking lot, and walk over to the pickup window area. So just to where the car is at the pickup drive, Mike.
Let me get that. Oh, that's the drive.
There's another window on the right side of the building that they could pick up from that area as well, but for walk-up customers to pick up from there. So there's no seating within the building. The intention is to have this drive-through only facility, similar to what we had proposed at the 580 John Fitch Highway site. As far as stormwater goes, there's a significant net decrease in impervious area because right now the entire site is paved, and we're adding considerable landscape beds, grass areas, et cetera, around the site, along with that settling basin that we're creating in the back left of the property. Overall, there's a decrease in impervious area, there's a decrease in peak rate of runoff. The stormwater is being provided with water quality units to be able to provide cleaning of the water that we're picking up from the site, along with the other areas of the property. Basically, in general, a pretty good improvement to what's out there right now. So if there are any questions, be more than happy to review them.
Bill, just one thing, see where the cursor is now?
Yep.
100-year floodplain.
Yeah.
Is there just a small portion of, or
Yeah,
this
so-
is out in the street?
The floodplain elevation in this area is what that dashed line represents. And because of the fact that the flooding can back up through the piping system, because just on the other side of John Fitch Highway, if you go down, that's where the floodplain is, according to the mapping system. And they do highlight the area just to the north of that. So we're adding that, we're acknowledging that it's there. We did have some narrative discussion within our narrative about doing, quote, work in the floodplain, but essentially it's remove and replace with no change in elevation for that work. That catch basin will remain. It will be then connected to the drainage system with a new pipe coming across the street, because the old pipe, the elevations don't really work for what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
But there's no physical way for the floodplain waters to get there unless it goes through the existing piping system, which is
damn it,
unusual. But it's we figured we'd be better off having it on the plan and addressing it than have someone ask the question.
If you want to see a detail on, there is a cross-section of the D-basin, right? I don't see it.
No, I don't.
No?
I don't
Okay.
think so, because it's not really a detention basin. It's just more or less a settling area.
Okay, gotcha.
It's more or less the overland flow from the rear parking lot has to go somewhere and get into the drainage system. So instead of paving more and putting a catch basin up in that area, pick it up, we decided we would add the grass area with some marginal infiltration that you might get through soils in the drier months with rainstorms, and then let that collect and then overflow into the drainage system versus run into a catch basin over more pavement.
So is there any emergency overflow or
Nope.
from this? No, didn't look like.
The overflow is the catch basin that's right beneath your cursor. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
okay.
set up a little
Yep,
bit higher.
yep.
And it's got a beehive grate.
We want to meet Joe.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hannigan. I guess one of my questions for you is if you are aware of the flood reduction plan for the Falula and Baker Brook watershed that the city is participating in as part of the state's municipal vulnerability preparedness grant program. And that is directly related to the project that you're working on. Are you familiar with this? Are you familiar with the
I believe
the
there
grant
was
project?
a notice sent out for some sort of not so much a seminar, but a program to be able to, where it was going to be discussed. I don't think that we haven't participated in that, but I think if anything, this would provide a reduction in flooding because of the fact with the decrease in impervious areas.
Can you, I guess one of my other questions.
You still have Nick here.
Oh, is
too.
he still here? Okay. Nick, would you like to, Commissioner Erickson, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. So we actually do have a public meeting next, I think it's next Wednesday, to discuss that Baker Brook MVP action grant, to go over kind of our preliminary results and findings regarding ways to potentially reduce flood elevations by implementing green infrastructure and nature-based solutions further upstream in the watershed. On this site in particular, it's like Mr. Hennigan said, it's mostly paved right now. So what they're proposing is most certainly an improvement over existing conditions. Because it's an existing site, it's fully paved, it's fully developed. I would consider this a redevelopment under the Massachusetts and the city stormwater standards. So I do believe that what they're proposing is a major improvement over existing conditions. It meets both the state and city stormwater standards to the maximum extent practicable. And I actually reviewed this project during the planning board submittal process. I provided some feedback to the planning board. And one of my thoughts was that, you know, this does have the potential to kind of, under flooding situations, backfeed or backflow through the stormwater system across John Fitch Highway, and you know, contribute to flooding on the site. So I don't know if there's been any thought given to installing some sort of maybe a backflow preventer or something like that. I know they make those duckbill kind of check valves, for lack of a better term to describe it. Something like that might be able to be implemented on the site in line between the site and the tie-in to that existing stormwater culvert. Aside from that, I don't see any other issues with what's being proposed. You know, I've got some concerns about the proximity of the construction site to the existing stormwater drainage line that runs through the easement and then underneath John Fitch Highway and over to the other side. So one of my suggestions to the planning board was to, you know, CCTV inspect that line before and after construction, just to make sure that there's no adverse impacts from the construction activities. But beyond that, like I said before, I perceive this to be a major improvement over existing conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Typically, we schedule a site visit at this point so that we can get out there and have a look. Does anybody have any preliminary dates for a site visit?
Saturday.
I have to work this Saturday, but if you guys would like, if this
Is there anyone that's really not familiar with the site?
I mean, it's up.
What was the question?
He asked if anyone was not familiar with the site.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm familiar with it. The only question I had was the northerly catch basin and the easterly catch basin. Each of them go directly underneath John Fitch Highway, directly to Baker Brook. Well, I guess only surface minimal drainage goes to the detention pond, and most of it goes directly to Baker Brook without any detention. Right? That's my only observation.
Would the commission like to schedule a site visit for this project? I guess would be one of the questions I have.
I'd be happy to go look at it. I'd be happy to entertain a boilerplate conditioned acceptance of the plan as submitted.
Commissioner Baker?
I won't be available on Saturday.
Okay, but would you?
Otherwise, sure, I'd go see it.
Okay.
I will not be available.
But would you, okay, that's
I'll be
a
at the Cape.
good.
Yeah,
But
ditto.
would you like to have, I mean, this Saturday, taking this Saturday out of the equation.
Pick a day.
Is there, would the commission like to entertain the notion of a site visit? Sounds like yes.
What
It
day?
sounds like yes. What day?
Pick 5 o'clock, pick 6 o'clock on a weekday. But the sooner the better. Get up,
Be raining the next 2 days, that'd be a perfect time.
Go on a rainy day. What else you gonna do?
How about Saturday, the 16th?
A week from Saturday.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Good, Saturday 16.
I'm not able to attend that day. I'm not able to attend, but you can soldier on in my absence.
And you can't make it this Saturday, is that right?
This Saturday.
Okay, so we'll all right.
So we're going to schedule a site visit for Saturday, April 16th.
And why didn't we do a weeknight even ahead of that, that would include you?
Is there another date you have?
Tomorrow night, Friday night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 o'clock, before you leave town. Get it done.
I can't do tomorrow, Thursday, but, I mean, all you need to do is post it. Well, at this point, it's Wednesday. Earliest you could do is Friday
You want to do Friday at 6 o'clock?
to meet the 48-hour.
No, I can't do that either. But you can go ahead without me.
Yeah. Technically, Mike, you can't do it Friday either because you have to post it
48
tomorrow.
hours.
All right. Unless you have it.
Let me ask a question.
How about
Right, Bill.
Monday?
How far beyond existing blacktop is your development, most notably the detention pond, the settling pond out back? How far beyond existing structure is that? It's undeveloped currently?
No. Mike, can I have control? Is there a way of you giving me control?
Sure. Let's figure how to do that.
Because we can go out individually when you have time to satisfy our questions.
So I work on Monday late. I could be there by 6:30, 6:45.
That's fine. I mean, I bet you the engineer would go out there twice to satisfy, to get this thing going.
Bill, our FATV overlords are going to be able to share your screen for you, give you the power to share the screen.
They muted me at the same time.
Madam Chair, would you
Oh, I have to stop my share.
pick a
Okay.
time and...
Tuesday would be
Pick a
better.
time, and if those that can make it will make it, and those that cannot will not.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so how about Tuesday, April 12th at 6 PM? Do you have a planning board meeting, Mike?
No, they
And
switched.
engineer
Somebody switched.
on board?
Okay, Bill's plan is up there now.
Well, I'm sorry, what was it, Monday?
No, Tuesday, April 12th, 6 PM.
Tuesday's a popular
I can do
meeting. Nights. You got something, Bill?
You can see I'm even putting it on my, All right, so Commissioner Donnelly, to answer your question, the light blue line here is the limit of existing pavement.
Okay.
And as you can see, we're pulling it back to here. And then we're removing the pavement through this whole landscape island all the way up to here. This should not be marked as green technically, because that's actually going to remain as pavement. But this is all going to stay as this is existing landscape that's going to stay there now. In this area here, we're removing, this is the island that's out there right now. We're removing the grass in this area here, or the bark mulch, but we're adding back all this green area inside is all going to be landscape grass, landscape beds, etc. Okay, including along this area. So we're removing quite a bit of pavement. I think that I think the reduction is pretty significant.
I mean, anyone who can't make it on Tuesday can,
Yeah.
it's pretty simple. Okay. April 12th,
It's
6
standard
o'clock.
practice for us to have a site visit.
Yeah, well, that's good. We got a schedule, be there, and there's a few of us that, who can't make it, will go on their own.
If you do happen to have 4 out there, you know, you could take a vote and knock this from next month's agenda.
Yes. Yes.
Okay?
That would be terrific.
Bill, we want to stay on Joe's good side. Well, I do.
Mr. Hannigan, do you have a number, like a percentage of the decrease in impervious area for this project?
I do. Give me a minute to find it. In our stormwater management calculations, it is a net decrease of 4,700 square feet.
Do you have a percentage for that?
Percentage decrease?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, you make me do math now. I have to take a look at what his numbers are here.
Okay, well, you can just bring that information to the site visit, and that's good. Can we have a...
Oh, okay, that's it right there. The existing is 67,000 square feet, proposed 62,000 square feet. So it's a decrease of
47 over 696.
7%.
Yeah, about 7%.
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
You beat me to it.
Motion to continue the meeting till April 12th, 6 PM.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Okay, let's call the roll. Commissioner Baker?
Aye.
Commissioner Christian?
Aye.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarfield, aye. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. So do we have an update on the Intervale Road site?
Oh, yeah, Nick, if you are still with us, we talked earlier today, but there isn't really anything too new there, at least nothing went wrong, unlike last month.
Yeah. So I am still here. So just to update the commission, our contractor bypassed the sewer blockage, cleaned the line, and then we had both the sewer line and the drainage line that runs to the site CCTV inspected to make sure that it was free of any sort of collapse or debris obstruction or anything like that. Everything checked out. Service has been fully restored. Amazon and its developer are working with the residents that have been directly impacted by the sewer backups. They're also paying for the services of our contractor, Blue Diamond, who we mobilized to bypass the sewer blockage and take care of unblocking the line. And they're also potentially willing to pay for the overtime for our staff to go out there and address the issue, although we haven't gone down that road yet. So overall, they've been highly cooperative. You know, I don't have any complaints. I think the situation was handled as well as it could have been. As I stated during the previous meeting, we notified Mass DEP and the EPA as per our regulatory requirements. We have not heard anything back directly from them, but if we do, I can certainly let Mike know, and he can forward that on to the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. And if I could just ask you, Commissioner Donnelly and I did stop by that during one of our site visit. We stopped by there. Do you recall the name of the site manager?
There's a lot of different parties involved with the site.
Do you remember?
So the company that we're working with most closely, I believe, is CRE Management. And it's an individual named Bill Hamill that is managing the overall project on the site. But there's also a construction company called Rycor that's on site doing a lot of the site work. And I believe there's going to be another company in there or has been another company in there to do the building and the actual structure work. So definitely a lot of moving parts.
Absolutely.
And then obviously they're all working ultimately for Amazon, so.
There was, I couldn't remember the gentleman's name.
I think it was Colin.
He said he was
Or
in charge
Muhammad.
of the whole thing. No, he was in charge of he said he was the person in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah, he was the go-to guy. He had the yellow helmet on, everybody
he
else had
just-
white ones. Yeah, yeah.
I thought his name was Ryan, but maybe it was.
So there is a guy named Ryan
Okay.
that I've been introduced to that is running the overall site construction.
Okay.
But there was a guy named Bill Hamill who was an owner's representative that was running the demolition portion of the project. So demolition of the existing Simon Saw building and all that. I think Ryan has since taken over since the demolition has been complete, and he's seeing the site development through. I don't know who's taking over for the building portion piece.
Thank you. It was Ryan then, and he said he was in charge. He was responsible. And he did tell us, just to move on from that, that there was the site had a compliance officer, because I think we scared Ryan when we showed up. But he did say there was a compliance officer that reported to him who had recently reported that the site was in full compliance and that all the best management practices were being utilized along the river to keep the soil out. And he was clear that compliance was a priority
That's great.
to him, and compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act and the local ordinance was a priority for him.
Great. And so beyond that, we had asked them to make sure that any of the material stockpiles were moved away from the drain and sewer manholes that were on site, away from the lines that connected the manholes. And we also asked them to stake out the location of all the existing manholes on the site and make sure those were painted and very visible to construction equipment. And we asked them to keep all their heavy equipment off of those lines because they are older piping systems. The sewer's clay, the drainage is concrete. So a lot of that heavy equipment can cause some damage. So they agreed to all those terms, and from what I understand, they've been fully compliant with that. So they've been good to work with. I mean, it was an unfortunate situation, obviously, but I'm comfortable with the response that was given by Amazon and all the different parties that are involved.
Madam Chair, could I suggest, there's a couple of folks who are waiting in attendees. It's one of the certificates of compliance, if you want to skip down to that. So,
Do we have anything else we need Commissioner Erickson for?
I don't, Nick, about Billings Road, where we went to see Mr. Syart this morning. You want to give a brief?
Yeah, so just to update the commission, we've got an issue out on Billings Road, which is a little side road off of Arnhow Farm Road past the high school. We've got a city drainage that dumps onto a parcel where a resident is, basically looking to use the parcel, and we've created essentially a extremely wet condition that's preventing him from using the property as intended. So we're looking to try to help remedy the situation. There's a wetland on the site. There's a stream kind of at the back portion of that existing parcel. I think the stream might actually be on an adjacent parcel. And Commissioner Christensen, you might be familiar. I think that might be your property on the back side.
Yes, it is. That is my property in the back.
Let me get.
Yeah, so we're looking at ways to try to redirect the city drainage onto the affected property owner's parcel and then pipe it from where it enters his parcel to the back side of the parcel where there's a stream. So the property owner has grown up in the area he's lived there for what I assume to be over 60 years, just based on his age. He's claimed that the parcel has never been wet like this until the city drainage was directed there. And he's looking to gain back that use of his property. So we're investigating ways to try to help accommodate him and redirect that city drainage to dry out his parcel and redirect that drainage to discharge to the stream itself, essentially. So yeah, Mike's got it up on the screen here. So the complication is the abutter, the neighbor, who's also sending some drainage to that parcel from the house and some looks to be some just corrugated perforated plastic pipes that might be serving as like groundwater subdrain or foundation drain or something. So we're looking at ways to try to improve that parcel. And at some point over either the next meeting or maybe the meeting following, you'll likely see a plan from me showing a proposed remedy to help alleviate some of the wet issue on this parcel.
So this morning, Nick and the property owner, Tom Syatt, who owns this parcel where my cursor is, and this parcel, were out on this lot. This is the abutting property where there's a couple of drain lines that discharge onto Mr. Syatt's property. But you can see from the contour here that there is a waterway, even though it doesn't show up in the USGS, but there is a waterway that feeds this wetland, which is your property.
So the parcel on the left is mine. The pipes in question come out right where the house is, right in the middle of Mr. Syatt's land. They run about 20 feet in. Right where you have the arrow is where they enter his property. And he wants, I guess, I don't know, but they want to divert it to the back. And the brook is actually almost like the property line from the top of that map all the way down to that swamp. Sometimes it's on the brook varies. Sometimes it's on the neighbors, sometimes it's on mine. I don't know exactly where it is there.
Right. Mike, could you show where the city drainage discharges approximately? It's kind of right in that triangle piece.
No, I think they're right in the middle of the property, like where you had it first, Mike. Right about there is where I think. They might either be roof drains, perimeter drains, I don't know what they are.
Yeah, there's pipes from that house right where Mike's cursor is, but there's city drainage that comes off of the roadway itself, basically right where the G in Billings is.
Okay.
And it discharges out of, there's two stormwater culverts that collect water from the northeast side of the road and discharge it to the southwest side of the road. Basically right where that G is. Maybe the N, I don't know. Right around that area. And that stormwater from the two culverts flows overland over that parcel right there, S9191, who's owned by Mr. Evan Bjork. And then it flows directly into Mr. Tom Syatt's property, which is S916 on the map. And it's basically creating a wet area right where Mike's cursor is. So the desire of the property owner is to have us remove that stormwater input into his property and pipe it to the back edge of his property where that stream is located, right adjacent to Commissioner Christensen's property.
So you would pick up street drainage out within the right-of-way here and carry it down this way?
Right.
Okay.
Actually, it's something that the city did. If you scroll down a little bit more.
They raised the level of the road?
There's another problem. I have another neighbor who was cutting trees on my land, and I looked, what are you doing? And there's a big 10-inch culvert pipe there coming from the street, dumping onto my land, which is running onto his land. And I don't know what that developer did there when he built those house lots. It would be further north, Mike, the other way.
Oh, further up, okay.
Right.
Oh, right, and these are older than the ones that we were looking at before. So this was back in the 90s, I think. These were split off, not 90s, but 2000s maybe?
Because we're going to have another neighbor complaining about that, actually a little more south, I think. It must be that vacant piece.
Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just saw it yesterday because I was driving by and the guy's cutting my trees. Then I see there's they've cut with a trench and then there's a big plastic pipe that comes out of the road, goes onto my corner, dumps into his front yard. It's a mess up there.
Okay.
and I own a third of his front yard.
You own his front yard? You own his front yard?
I get a question. Are you directing water from a city way onto private property, or is it a natural condition? I look at you putting a pipe on private property and you own it, you got an easement through private property and you own it forever, including taking care of it. If you're responsible for it, do it. If we're not responsible for it, it's a private property zoning problem. You want to be a nice guy? I don't want to pay for his drainage problem. I got my own drainage problems.
I agree with you, Councilor Donnelly, or Commissioner Donnelly. I think the issue here is that we don't have any easements out there. We've got drainage within the city's right-of-way that's definitely not the natural, flow of water. It's a piped conveyance system. And when it was installed partially on private property. So it goes outside of the city's right-of-way. So it's city drainage directed towards a private property. We have some of the piping infrastructure on private property, and we don't have an easement for it. And I don't know why it was done like this. I know Billings is more of a country road, so maybe DPW just kind of went up there and did it back in the day, but we're stuck dealing with it now.
So where are we going?
Okay.
We'll see it next month, is that it?
Yeah.
We'll see it next
Yeah,
month.
we'll see it next month. Thank you, Commissioner Erickson.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
You said we have some...
So several years ago, if you recall, the Wachusett Station was built out in West Fitchburg, and there were three separate notices of intent and orders of conditions. One, to make repairs to different railroad bridges along the route between downtown here and the new Wachusett Station, the station itself and the platform, and some drainage improvements further, it would be upstream of the platform. And there's several folks here from the MBTA or HNTB. Let me get that screen up so we can, if they are still...
Have you gone out and inspected it, Michael?
I have not, but I guess the question is, oh, now I lost them. So they will be requesting a certificate of compliance. The problem is, it has since lapsed, but there's still a little bit of not remediation work, but there needs to be some additional check dams installed along the drainage way in order to attenuate the flow of stormwater. And I'm sorry, I'm losing, is participants. Okay, so if Mike Turgeon, sorry, I think you were muted until now, Mike. Now we can hear you.
Yes, we have the three orders of conditions that we'd like to close. One is the one that you're referring to that has work that still needs to be done is 105-616. It's for the tracks and the ditch. The ditch that was added to pick up runoff or convey runoff around the station, the track that was installed for the station siding. The ditch there should have had check dams installed to prevent an increase in peak flows, because that ditch goes downstream and then it's conveyed under the tracks through a pipe into one of the other ditches that ties into the wetland system over there. And the engineer maintains that those check dams should be installed to prevent increases in peak flows during large storm events.
So it seems the issue is this. MBTA applies for a certificate of compliance. The OOC is expired now, because it's beyond the period where you know, had to complete the work. But for the addition of those additional check dams, however many they were, the number that Mike had mentioned, can that additional work be done, even though the order of conditions has expired technically, but just as a precursor to getting an order, a certificate of compliance from the commission?
Can we extend the,
Well, it's already expired technically.
oh, okay.
But the other option, I guess, would be to refile an order of conditions and go through the same hearing process again and punt this down the road, you know, another month or two. But it seems if they're making an effort to make the site right, why not okay the installation of the additional check dams, and then once that's been done, that's been inspected, it's working okay, then issue the certificate of compliance.
Mike, you know I'm a little deaf. Are we zeroing in on the hillside with the extracted barrels or the drainage lagoon?
No, back closer to.
Residential, commercial?
No,
This project.
it's on the MBTA property. It's right off the railroad tracks.
Right.
But
It's actually on Pan Am property. It's MPDA technically. This is not a MBTA.
okay, but it's on railroad property.
I'm just trying to figure what.
It's on
I
railroad
remember 20
property.
years
It's on
of field. Which one was this? I don't know the applicant, I don't know the site, but tell me and I'll remember. I just don't know where it is.
It was when.
So if you're standing at the Wachusett Station platform, there's the siding for the train to come up to the platform, and then there's a ditch. That's the ditch that requires should have the check dams in it.
So the feds are the
That
applicants.
ditch was installed during the construction of the station.
It was a federal project.
MBTA.
That's what it was.
It was
Okay.
a,
I remember.
yeah,
I remember.
it was
I
a
get it.
MBTA project, yes.
It's pretty inefficient of them to allow it to expire and not to have taken care of it in a timely manner. It wasn't that important, apparently.
Okay, point taken. We're at the point now where they want to get
What do you
this.
recommend? What do you recommend from a
I
legal
think,
standpoint?
okay, the installation of the additional check dams, we'll check it when they have been installed, and if they're working properly and all the other site work has been done properly, then issue an order, a certificate of compliance.
Do we need to give them an emergency certification to do this work, considering that their order of condition is
No,
just
it's not-
to protect everybody?
Get it done.
I guess you could do it in that. I mean, I don't see it in an emergency sense, like we got to do this because there's a spill of hazardous material.
Get it done.
Yeah.
Get it
How-
done.
To
Get
that
it done.
point,
It's
Mike,
the order.
how soon could the work be done? Could you be back next month with
I think
photographs of it being installed, already installed?
there would be some work with the contracting and things like that. I don't think I would think that, you know, by early summer, we would be back and we would be, you know, and by next week, we would have the actual request to do it, and kind of referencing what we're discussing tonight, we would have the request for COC in for that one, and hopefully the one for the station as well. So we would be wrapping up all three late spring, early summer.
Okay.
Right. This is a 9ID from MBTA, the project manager of the station itself. I acknowledge that the permit was out for a very long and staying time, and I do apologize. I was brought on this project at least about a couple months ago just to understand what was going on. So we're committed to get this completed.
Okay.
So we
Do you
don't
have
need
to
to
bring any heavy equipment in to install the stone for the check dam?
Yes, we most likely will be bringing heavy equipment, but it'll be at the Wachusett station. Either we'll have.
Will
Go
it be in a wetland area, or can you do it all from the upland?
The work would all be done from either would be done either from track-mounted equipment or equipment that is placed in the,
In the platform area.
you could get into the, I mean, that ditch was just created. It's upstream of all other wetlands, so I don't know that it would be a stream at this point. So I think it's in the buffer zone of that other wetland, and it's more of a, like an intermittent, non-jurisdictional stream at this point, under the state regs.
Yeah, so it would be a drainage ditch. Got it. Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. We don't
Okay.
need to make a motion, or, I mean, do
I
we
think
need to do anything?
if the Census Commission is to allow the additional work to make things right, then come back once that work's been done, request a certificate of compliance, and let's take care of this and the other two outstanding order conditions that MBTA has in one meeting.
Okay.
Is that good, Mike?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good to me too as well. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
We're clearing the deck here. What can we get through? What can we get through? Mike, have you heard from anybody with Woodland Estates? What's happened with the planning board?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes. Who is this?
Ralph.
It's Ralph.
Oh, I'm
I need to drop off. This is my only way to let you know that, but I realize you're going to lose a quorum when I do that.
Okay, well, how about before Ralph leaves, we make a vote for Ms. Jacobs?
Yes, please.
Yes. Ralph, is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so can we have a motion, just moving forward in the jumping around in our agenda, can we have under correspondence, can we have a motion and a second to accept Joyce Jacobs as an associate commissioner?
Motion made.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, let's call a vote. Commissioner Baker?
Aye.
Commissioner Christian?
Aye.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Sarfield, aye. The motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. And thank you, Dr. Baker. And I guess,
Well, I'm thinking if and anything else that can't be handled in an email or just next
Okay.
Tuesday or next week. Oh, one thing, if Bill was still here, when we were talking about the Intervale Road site, GFI International, who's the landlord there, is interested in potentially acquiring a nearby property it's the old airport sand pit on Crawford Street. The discussion of the planning board has always been, if there is a way to provide an alternative access to Amazon through the adjacent former Simon Saw and Steel property and get around their little landfill and get another access out to Crawford Street, do it, pursue that. The same landlord, GFI International, is also interested in acquiring the airport pit and installing, which we will have plans for next month's meeting, a very large distribution facility of like almost 400,000 square feet. Not necessarily Amazon, but, might be. There are other people who need big boxes like that, apparently. FRA is in discussion with GFI to see whether that happens if they want to. So there will be a future filing. I just
Okay.
want to put that out.
so that being said, can we have a motion and a second to adjourn the regular meeting of the April 6th?
So moved.
I have to ask
Mike?
about Woodland Estates.
Okay,
Oh,
hold on
Bill,
a
you're there
second.
still.
Either.
Yeah, I've been waiting to bring up the whole GFI thing.
Oh,
Who is
okay.
this?
This is Bill. Sorry, I didn't see you there.
Sorry.
What did I miss?
We were on the agenda for a discussion about that GFI project at the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority.
Okay, it's 9:01. What can you tell them that I already hadn't?
Well, I was gonna bring up I still can share my screen, so I'll bring up the plan.
can you, Ralph, can you stick around for a couple minutes, or?
Quickly.
So this is the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority land. Oops, wrong way. If you remember correctly, this is the existing driveways in this location here. So this is the plan of what we're proposing. We're going to be submitting this to the city actually tomorrow to the planning board and conservation for the next meeting. So we wanted to kind of have a quick review of what we're doing with the commission because a majority of the work is being done right up against the Nashua River along with Baker Brook. Now the Baker Brook side is Lunenburg Conservation. The Nashua River side is Fitchburg. So quickly what we did was we did a riverfront analysis on the existing conditions. A lot of this area is previous developed, existing gravel paths and stuff like that. So this is our existing area of review, if you will. And then what we've done, and we've done this on several other projects, we'll break down and itemize those areas that are going to be restored, those areas that are going to be redeveloped as impervious, those areas that will be redeveloped as lawn and landscape areas, and those areas will be redeveloped as drainage basin. And all those are going to be basically outlined on the plan. We've already got all the plans ready, along with tabbed out to see for review by, Tim's going to want to review this, review all that stuff. So we just wanted to, what we wanted to do was really kind of give the commission a heads up. We tried to have this a little bit earlier, but this is where we're at. We'll be submitting to the planning board tomorrow, and we just wanted to. I was hoping to have a little bit more time, but I know you're short on time. But we're hoping to make this project a really good benefit to the city, especially considering the condition of the land that's out there right now. There's a lot of debris out there, if you will, a lot of gravel mixed with pavement, mixed with pipe, a lot of logging remnants. Must be, I'm presuming it's from tree clearing or tree. You know, when a tree goes down in the city, they cut it down, they bring it here, it goes to pile, and there's huge piles of not even logs, they're trees. That are 24, 36-inch diameter trees that are just lying in piles. So there's a lot of stuff that the city has used this area for lack of a better term, as a dumping ground. It's not a dump per se, but there's a lot of it's similar to the material that is along the Baker Brook area in Lunenburg, where there's as the city over the, many decades, they've taken the gravel out and they've gone back and they've done some road work and they just bring the excavations back and dump it and then push it in a pile. And it's got, it's got sand and gravel in it. It's got rock. It's got concrete. It's got pavement. It's got pretty much anything you can think of. But it doesn't appear to have any type of hazardous material designation. And there are some studies going on with that right now as part of the due diligence to purchase the land. But we're hoping that this provides a significant improvement to the site relative to the wetlands, to the riverfront area, and all those other elements of the project. So we look forward to meeting with you regarding this project. So that's really it. Thanks for staying on, Dr. Baker.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Been a motion.
Just before we go, as it pertains to Woodland Estates, have we heard from them at all? Have we heard from Jamie Rowe at all?
An update with Ms. Hamburg at the last planning board meeting a couple of weeks ago. Planning board agreed to reopen the hearing at the end of this month on the 26th, re-notify abutters, and talk about potentially putting additional conditions on their special permit and including an end date, a schedule. As far as the restoration, wetland replication area, I don't know.
Okay. Can we send them a certified letter documenting that they need to submit a new NOI and documentation of the wetland replication? That
Okay.
seems reasonable. They need to prove, we've been going through this and waiting. They're working under an expired order of conditions. I think the commission has been more than generous with our patience towards this. So at this point, they need to submit a new NOI, and we need documentation of that wetland replication project.
Madam Chair, or a enforcement order should be issued.
What was that, Tim?
Or an enforcement order should be issued.
So let's say they have until the May meeting to submit this NOI and the documentation of the wetland replication, or we'll be submitting an enforcement order. And how's that, Tim?
Perfect.
I don't think we can make a motion about that, but we can discuss that afterwards. We don't have a quorum for that.
No, you still do, Ralph is here.
Well, he can't vote on that.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, we'll talk about it. But that being said, I think we can have the chair adjourns the meeting at 9:08 p.m. Thank you for your commitment to public service, everybody, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Yeah.